Hello everyone. This webinar will start at 12 o'clock, so we are still waiting for a few attendees. We will be with you soon. Thank you very much. Hello to our future industrial psychologists and welcome to this A Career in Industrial Psychology webinar. We are very privileged and happy that you are with us today. We see that there is still a few of you guys that's joining, so welcome and please, yes, enjoy this session with us. So from my side, I'm Dr. Marissa Brouwers, the current president of the Society for Industrial and Organizational Psychology of South Africa. I just want to give a few pointers in terms of the outline for today's session. Firstly, we will have our panelists speak about some of the topics that you asked for and wanted to know about. We had a huge influx of questions, and we want to really thank you all for sending us these questions and things that you're really wondering about in terms of industrial psychology and what route to take and how does the world out there look like. So we would really want to commend you and thank you very much. However, we could only address a few questions during this session today, but we also think that we will be hosting other sessions as well to address some of those questions. So yes, from our side, thank you very much. Just on the technicality, please be reminded that this is a webinar and there might be some technical glitches. So just bear in mind that you should please be patient with us as well. So there's a few functions that you will see on your side. Firstly, you are welcome to use the chat box you can ask us questions specifically only for the panelists, or you can ask questions in general for us as well as some of the attendees that's on here today. You're also welcome to use the Q&A function to state your question. And then also the raise your hand function. We will be having questions asked during this session afterwards, after the panelists have addressed some of your questions. So please try the raise the hand function if you would like to, just to see how that works. So if everybody is on here, please quickly raise your hands. Let's see how that works. Wonderful. Great. Anzel, Sipe, Koketsu. Yes, so yes. Remember also to just click on it again to just lower your hand as well. But if you have a question at the end of the session, then you are more than welcome to raise your hand. So thank you very much for that as well. So from my side, I would really love to introduce our panelists for today. So I would like to just firstly welcome Sarika. Sarika Thakur is a registered industrial psychologist. She's currently the HR manager at a company called Netsurit. She's got almost 10 years experience in the field and is very skilled in terms of leadership development, psychometric assessment, and all HR related functions within organizations. And she will be speaking to us regarding human resource HR background, and also what is the value that an industrial psychologist can bring towards the HR field, and what is the differences between an HR and an industrial psychologist and a labor relations person. So Sarika, thank you very much for being here today, and welcome to you as well. Secondly, we have Professor Cora Juncker. She's also a registered industrial psychologist at the Health Profession Council of South Africa. She's currently a full professor at the Northwest University. She's got over 20 years experience in academia as well as a consultant. She also has her own career counseling business, and her interest is very much in career counseling, emotional intelligence, imposter syndrome, leadership, and specifically leadership amongst women in leadership. As well as, like I said, emotional intelligence as well. So, Prof. Cora, thank you very much for joining us here today. We are looking forward to what you have in store for us regarding what, in terms of the background and what and how to become an industrial psychologist. What's the route that one needs to take? We also have Fiona Martin. Fiona Martin is a registered industrial psychologist. She's also a senior manager in talent management. She has work experience within consulting, education, nonprofit, and broadcast media environment. She's a huge worldwide recognized speaker, and she speaks a lot in terms of media, radio, television, for example, Talk Radio 702, ENCA. She also writes articles for JSE Quarterly. That's just only a few that I'm naming at this stage. And of course, you can also check out her latest blogs and podcasts and writings on her website as well. And she will be talking to us about the fields of industrial psychology in which you can decide where you want to specialize in. And Fiona, thank you very much for being here with us today, and we look forward to hear what you also have to share with us in terms of this expertise. Last but not least, we've got Gillian Donna. She's a registered industrial psychologist, and she's also the founder of CareerCraft. She's got over 15 years experience in consulting across industries and different organizational levels. She is also an accredited coach in Martha Beck, Enneagram, as well as inner life skills. And her focus specifically is also on career coaching, peer mentoring, development, and facilitation. So to all the panelists, thank you very much for being here today. We really appreciate that you are here today. So one of the things that we need to take into consideration is that we spend almost, in our lifetime, you spend 90,000 hours working on average. So you can imagine if you are in a position where your well-being is not well, and you spend so much time during that session in your workplace, you can just imagine how unhealthy you will be as a person, but that it will also contribute to the organization as a whole and have an impact on your support system. So it's very important that when you are in a position and you are an industrial psychologist, that you also look at the human behavior and the well-being of employees within the workplace. So I'm actually very curious to hear from your side, what do you think an industrial psychologist is? And you're welcome to look on your phones, just connect quickly with www.menti.com and use this unique code 81989. So yes, so just that question, what is an industrial psychologist? And you're welcome to type that question as well. So we will be looking at the results a little bit later. So it would be interesting to see also what you think an industrial psychologist is. So yes, from my side, I would also like to just introduce to you our society, and that is the Society for Industrial and Organizational Psychology of South Africa. Some of you might have heard of it, some of you might have heard of it for the first time, but Sciopsa is a member-based non-profit organization, and we are established to enhance the industrial psychology profession within South Africa. So we are here to serve our members and also to create conditions in which we can create opportunities for industrial psychologists to deliver efficient and effective services to the benefit of all within South Africa. So, of course, as an industrial psychologist, you are a human behavior specialist in the workplace, and you use the psychological principles that you study during your years at varsity, and you apply that within the workplace. And you can be a very good and huge asset within the workplace as an industrial psychologist, specifically looking at the well-being and also surrounding how that can be in South Africa specifically. So as Sciopsa, if you are a member, that is a huge value for you, because we provide you as a person with a professional identity, and you also have a network platform in which you can share and network with other like-minded professionals within the industrial psychology field. So it creates an identity, it creates a belonging, a feeling that you belong to a professional body. And that's what I always say. It's good to be part of a professional body and to share your network platforms in terms of that as well. So yes, we have quite a few members, executive members on the body. And as you can see, there's people in various interest groups and various regional branches that can reach out to you. We have had some visits at some universities for IOP students just to come say hi and hear what is some of your needs that you have. So you will see, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, you will see that we have various interest groups. For example, the people assessment in industry, PI, coaching and consulting psychology, system psychodynamics, neuroscience, and psycholegal. So that's some of the interest groups and some of the fields that we bring valuable information to our members, and webinars and sessions and hosting, for example, network sessions in which you can hear about the latest news that's going on in the trends within industrial psychology. And you can see within your region, we also have a footprint in there. If you're in the Northwest or you're in Gauteng, there is branch chairs that you can reach out to and ask, this is the need that we have as students. Can you please assist us or come to visit us at our university? So you're more than welcome to reach out to Sciopsa as well. And yes, we love to facilitate and help out and serve our members. So we create events that is continuous professional development, CPD accredited events that you then can contribute or you can come to as students or as full members one day when you are professionals, then you can attend these events and catch up on the latest trends and equip yourself with the latest professional things that's going on out there. So yes, like I said, we have got live webinars, we've got very nice events at our regional branches and also interest groups. And it's an opportunity for you then also, to network and to get to know other professionals within the field of industrial psychology. So, and of course, we always have our flagship event, annual conference each year. And we always need people and students to help us out in terms of the conference, or even if you feel you would like to be part of a committee, you're more than welcome to contact us as well in regions as well. So how do I become a student member of Sciopsa? That's easy. You can just contact us at info@sciopsa.org.za or scan this nice smart scan, and you can become a member, and at the cost of 177 Rand per year, and then you can also be part of that. And we really need student volunteers, so please, if you feel the need and urge to serve in this profession and also to get to know other professionals during your studies, please reach out to Sciopsa and get to know us on look out for us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. It seems is the new in thing in terms of that as well. So yes, it's wonderful to see you all here and have you on board. And I just want to quickly share with you what is some of the results, if any. Let me see if you guys actually did do this. Wonderful. I see that you did. I just want to quickly share to you some of the ideas that you had. So yes, so this is some of the ideas that you had in terms of what is an industrial psychologist. And it's wonderful to see human behavior specialist. Yes, I've mentioned that. 24 people that voted as specialists. Definitely, as you can see, we are professionals within the field. And if you become an industrial psychologist, that is someone that's a registered person at the Health Profession Council. So you have really good expertise and you are a professional in the field. And it's good that you also tell people that you have these skills and that you are professional within the field of organizational psychology and what you can contribute one day in the workplace. So thank you very much also for participating in this Mentimeter. I'm also just curious, before we start with our next speaker, which is going to be Sarika, I'm just putting up a poll here and I just want to find out who is the guys that joined us today. So are you pre-postgraduate? Please indicate to us and partake in that. So yes, if you would like I said again, if you would like to take part in Sciopsa and you want to be a member, you're more than welcome to contact us as well. But I think for now, it would be good to actually see and hear how does it differ in terms of industrial psychologists and how does it differ in terms of an HR specialist. So we have our specialist person, Sarika, here to tell us a little bit more about that today. Sarika, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks, Marissa, for the warm welcome and good afternoon to everybody online. Let me just minimize this. Awesome. So as Marissa mentioned in the beginning, we tried to answer all the questions in our respective areas and, time permitting, we can't get to all of them, but I picked 3 big areas, and that's why I have one slide, because I think it will tie in nicely because there's a common thread to them. So one of the questions, and thank you for all of them, was a lot of industrial psychologists fall into HR by default, and not having competent people in HR. How does this influence how serious business takes HR? So I think this is a very valuable question. I do think a lot of our professionals, industrial psychologists, end up in HR, either through internship programs within larger organizations because a lot of times the human capital lies within the HR structure in different businesses. Also, like myself, I started in consulting and wanted to get a bit of a deeper understanding of how business itself works, so that I could influence business from my point of view as an industrial psychologist. And that was one of the reasons why I went into HR and made that conscious decision. And I think in terms of the competence of people in HR, I don't think you have a sense or a situation where you have incompetent people in HR. I think you have different types of competencies within the HR team. And maybe just to go on that for a bit, the HR involves many different elements of the more operational part of people in the business. So you have something called the HR value chain, and in that they are basically anything that impacts people in the business from the time that they are considering to be hired to after they leave the business. And there's so many parts of that. And so that's why I say competence goes into different parts of the HR value chain. For instance, many organizations have payroll or benefits like your medical aid and things within HR. So it's not necessarily something that us industrial psychologists specialize in, but you have different competence. And in terms of how serious business views HR, from my experience, it does also depend on the culture of the organization. You have different organizations where, people, culture, values, well-being of individuals is first and foremost. And of course, then HR is much more prominent in those types of organizations. But even without that focus on the culture and the people and those type of elements, HR is still a very serious part of the business, because you are impacting people and you're influencing what happens with people in your organization. And no business in the world can function without people. So I do think that in all types of companies, regardless of the culture, HR is a serious influence. But I've had the privilege of working with organizations where people, culture, and the well-being of staff has been forefront. And that is the reason why the HR team has been very involved in most of the strategic decisions, or even to give input and influence when the business embarks on certain initiatives, and also providing resources and time to improving the efficiency and quality of life of people at work. So I hope that tackles that part of one of the questions that was posed on my side. In terms of what value to industrial psychologists bring to the HR team, and also I think to business in general, other than psychometrics. So psychometrics, as you all will know, is one part of what us industrial psychologists study and practice and so on, and it has a lot of value to it. But I think the value that we get is just on the point there, is that in terms of we are scientists, or I view us as scientists and professionals in terms of studying human behavior and mental processes. And I think that is where the value comes into HR and businesses. So as much as we have a unique a skill of psychometrics, that isn't, I feel, where the value comes. The value comes in understanding the individuals, in understanding why we do certain things, or why people within the company do certain things, or if there's an initiative that the business would like to do, really analyzing the behavior, doing the research, and really getting to the core of the why. And I think that is where we add value, is really understanding the why and the mechanisms that will contribute to success or failure of whatever strategic decisions or initiatives that are rolled out. And I think also in terms of value, we also can influence the how, in the sense of a change management. Change management is one of the areas that industrial psychologists focus on. Even if we won't be able to design something or implement it in the way that we want to, we can definitely influence how it is rolled out to individuals, how it is received, how to increase buy-in, and those things, because we have such a deep understanding of human behavior and applying those principles. So I do think that the industrial psychologists have much value to add in HR and in business in general, aside from psychometrics. And even I know it will be covered by some of the ladies a little bit later, but in terms of the future trends with the fourth industrial revolution and where business is going, most organizations are realizing that there needs to be more focus on people and understanding people and why people do the things they do, because ultimately it does affect efficiency and performance of the business. And I think that is why we will have even more value to add as time goes on. Then the last question, which is why the slide comes together, is the difference between organizational psychology, HR, and IR, which is employment relations. So I think what I wanted to focus on is that there are similarities, between HR and industrial psychology, but they are different. So I think where the similarity comes in is that both professionals focus on people at work and improving the efficiency and quality of life. But as I mentioned before, the big difference comes in where us as industrial psychologists have that deep understanding of human behavior, processes, what goes on in the minds of people at work, and we can apply those principles, and then to ask and answer that why question. And I think that is the big difference. We have that lens to be able to consult to the business, whether you're an external consultant or within the HR team consulting to your business internally. And I think then on the HR side, it is you, as I mentioned in the beginning, you tackle the elements of the HR value chain in terms of any element that impacts a person before they join, from the hiring process to when they leave your business. And there is a lot of activity around planning, directing, and coordinating effort and initiatives, and actually executing on that. So almost covering the how and the what. And also the HR often becomes the link between employees and leadership, whereas the industrial psychologist within the team can take an outside in view and provide very objective analysis and input in that regard. So, and then the last part, which I haven't put at the employment relations, it is a part of HR. So I know there are a lot of consultants and labor law experts that consult specifically on employment relations, but the big difference there is that the employment relations or labor relations refers to matters that are tied to the law, rights and laws of your staff, tackling matters such as maybe disciplinary issues, retrenchments, things like that. So that is where then the employment relations, which is actually part of HR, becomes quite prevalent. And I think even with industrial psychologists, we can influence those processes, because even if you're doing something like a retrenchment process, you are able to influence how people are treated and how we can execute such a terrible sort of thing in the way that protects people and the morale of people and the well-being of people. But there is that difference. So that is the areas from my side. I hope that I've covered the questions that the three of you guys put forward there, and I hope that also through this you can see that what are the big differences, although there are a lot of similarities, but I can definitely say for myself there's a big value add that industrial psychology brings to HR and businesses in that regard.
Thank you very much, Sharika. I think that's a very clear indication of how industrial psychologists differ from the HR and the labor relations professional. And I can see in the chats, it's interesting to also see that some of our attendees is within roles, and they also focus on the why and the how that you are actually talking about as industrial psychologists. So they can definitely relate to that as well. So thank you very much for sharing that knowledge and expertise with us today. And I think some of the other questions that also comes out here in the chat, specifically surrounding, can I, as an industrial psychologist, become an industrial psychologist if I study HR and things like that? And I think that is definitely one thing that Professor Cora Juncker will be addressing now in her session. So hopefully that will answer that question within our chat as well. So Sarika, thank you very much from our side. Yes, Professor Cora, we would love to hear your views and also sharing in terms of what's best for the industry and how to become an industrial psychologist. Thank you, Prof. Cora.
Thank you. First of all, I think what's important is what Dr. Marissa mentioned in the beginning, that this is a professional, definitely a professional career, and also Sarika that said that we are specialists and that we are behavioral scientists. So we will definitely be looking at that. So the questions that I've chosen, first of all, is, must I study a diploma or degree in human resource management before I specialize as an industrial psychologist? Since I did a BA in applied psychology and I'm currently doing honors in psychological counseling. Hopefully, if time permits, I will also address what is the best industry to gain valuable work experience as an industrial psychologist. So the reason why I've chosen the first question is, I think that, like Sarika also said, there is definitely an overlap sometimes in functions and different types of support that the different types of psychology routes can give one another. But I think that there is, and this is also in my experience, that there definitely are students coming from applied psychology, coming from counseling psychology, from clinical psychology, and there's definitely a place where there are different overlaps and bridges. So what I will do is I will share with you now the route that the industrial psychologist then will take. Just one slide back. Okay. So definitely, I think if you see this slide, it can be a bit overwhelming, but keep in mind that industrial psychology then definitely is a professional degree. So I will just quickly give you then an overview of this different paths. So immediately you will see the Health Professions Council's logo there. So you must remember that because this is a professional degree where you will specialize, you will work with people, with human capital, you must take into consideration that it's a very highly regulated type of career. So normally the Health Professions Council will give their guidelines in their different policies and documents, and you can consult all of those documents is definitely there on the Health Professions Council's website. So between the Health Professions Council and within higher education, they also have a few guidelines and parameters that degrees must actually adhere to. So first of all, I saw that there was quite a couple of first years and second years and third years. So I'm very pleased that you've also joined this seminar. So normally you will start there with a 3-year degree industrial psychology. So there's definitely then what we call an exit level towards a 3-year degree. So you can probably work in human resources or recruitment and training and development. But I certainly want to encourage you definitely to go on with postgraduate degrees, because it definitely gives you more skills and more qualification, and it definitely broadens your horizon. So typically in this 3-year degree, you can do a 3-year degree. Sometimes this degree lies within humanities, for example, a BA in behavioral sciences, or different BCom degrees. So these are just examples, I think, from UJ and from the Northwest University that I've taken, but they all then lead to a 3-year degree in industrial psychology. So what normally is a very good sign actually of, I don't want to say quality degree, but that you are more or less on the correct path, is that that degree is normally, it constitutes of core IOP modules, and then of course psychology modules, because it's definitely a part of psychology. Like for instance, you will have modules there on development psychology and abnormal psychology. And then of course the students always get a little bit of anxiety because there's some stats modules in, but you will see also the reason for those statistics and research modules, especially within the postgraduate degrees. What you must take into consideration is that there is really a rigorous selection process going on to a BCom or a BA IOP honors. And within that selection, we also take into consideration then what the Health Professions Council actually guides us, what are those competencies that future IOP psychologists then needs. So please work very hard. I know that experience also counts there, and students also ask me a lot of time, how can I prepare myself for those selections? Is definitely be yourself. Coming from an introvert, I know being part of selection is sometimes very hard, but remember that a selection panel can only give you ratings and select you on what they see. So please participate in those selections. And normally they can also ask you maybe to do a little bit of writing, so must make sure that those are also up to standard. So when you then get selected from that 3-year degree to do a BCom or a BA honors degree, the exit level there is then definitely to become a psychometrist. That is what Sarika also talked about. After, of course, a board exam and your 720 hours or a 6-month practicum, that's part of the degree. It's also accredited with the Health Professions Council. So I just wanted to give you an insight on the honors degree then in industrial psychology. Very, very important is that you must make absolutely sure that your degree will form of an accredited program. You get academic programs, universities that only offer academic programs, and those academic programs, they do not lead to a registration, possibly as a psychometrist. So they are not accredited with the Health Professions Council. So you must make absolutely sure there's a list on the Health Professions Council of universities that is accredited with the Health Professions Council. So the Health Professions Council states different competencies that they want within that curriculum. So I've listed it there. Under every one of these blocks is a whole nother set of descriptions that I'm not going to go through all of them, but they are also listed on the Health Professions Council. It's called Form 94. And it was a document by the Professional Board of Psychology, and this is their minimum standards of training. So for instance, on the psychological assessments, they want you to be cultural sensitive. You must be ethical in your practices. Psychological interventions will, for instance, be that you must be able to provide verbal and written feedback, as well as know the basic counseling needs of people. And so every one of these competencies has their own list of what you need then to adhere to. Then what's also prescribed here on the left-hand side then is more or less what such a honors degree must constitute of. So you will see, of course, ethics is always very important within every type of psychology. Psychometrics, they put a lot of emphasis on research methods and projects, on psychological assessment, psychometrist counseling. And then on your right side, I haven't listed all of them, but from those lists, you must include, or universities must include, a minimum of 2 of those modules. So I've listed a few of them, for example, psychopathology, labor relations, organizational psychology, career psychology. So that is the reason why there are certain overlaps within different universities' curriculum, and then there are those elective modules that every university can include on what they decide on, and whatever has then been also approved by the HEQF, the Higher Education Qualifications Framework. So after your honors degree, I must tell you, those students will definitely agree with me that's currently doing their honors. Does not matter what university you do this with, but it is quite a full program, and you must really stay with the program. So you will need all the support from people and from your classmates that you can get. So again, after this honors degree, it's not to say that you can just go on with a master's degree. Of course, then there's a selection program. Again, also competencies that the Health Professions Council will prescribe what those competencies are, and even a few students will then get selected from the honors degree. So of course, academics is always important so that you can get selected, but please make sure that while you are still an honors student, every opportunity that you get to shadow without payment, it's fine, just get enough experience so that they can see that you are a well-rounded student. So within this MA or MCOM Industrial Psychology degree is also then competencies that the Health Professions Council wants to see. For example, again, you will see some research, competencies, ethics, definitely legislation, psychological assessment, interventions. Sarika also mentioned change. So let's say they put a lot of emphasis also on interventions for change management, also the different theories. And then there at the bottom, I've just listed for you examples of how these models then will look like. For example, people development, advanced counseling, or scientific reasoning, career psychology, well-being, definitely a very good basis of industrial psychology and psychology theories. And then, of course, your minor or your mini dissertation. And that is also the reason why they include then research and statistical modules from a pre-graduate level. So again, just like your honors degree, you will have to write a board exam after prescribed internship. I already see that there's a lot of questions on internships. That normally there's a lot of questions about that, but you can also have a look on the Health Professions Council. There's sometimes good examples or guidelines on what constitutes such an internship. So then only after you have done your modules and you've started with your internship and you register then as an intern, if you've done that, then you go on again to write a board exam, and then only you become an industrial psychologist. So it's not an easy path, but it's a path that's definitely worth all your input. So I think next then, just to come back to the question, you must just keep in mind that every institution, every higher institution, their degrees, although there are some overlaps, they will differ. So if a student then comes from, example, from applied psychology or clinical psychology, of course that department head or the program leader will ask for your academic documents, and they will want to see your module outcomes, because I will want to assess what exactly did you do in your pre-graduate. So normally they will have a look, were there any industrial psychology modules included within that degree? What were the core normally psychology modules, any stats modules, and they will then assess based on what your normal BA in applied psychology or clinical psychology constituted of. Possible then, because I cannot exactly say because I haven't seen the content of the modules, but a possible route probably with that question will be then to do the core pre-graduate modules, for example, within industrial psychology. If those were not there, possibly personnel psychology or career psychology, organizational behavior, depending on what constitutes that specific institution's pre-graduate degree. So if a student then have an honors, for example, in psychological counseling, I will look at what they did on a pre-graduate level, but definitely there will be some overlap. So for an honors in psychological counseling, there definitely, I can foresee that there will be possible credits, courses and modules that you do not have to do again, with an overlap of up to 50% that you can get credits for, so that you do not have to repeat all those modules. And then I can foresee that you will have to do the IOP related modules, and some may include the HR related, as Sarika also said, some of it can then definitely be the same. So some higher institutions will allow you to do possibly those pre-graduate level industrial psychology modules that possibly you've missed out on. Some of them do require that you do then an extra year just to catch up with those, and then they will see what they can give you credits for and what you still need to do. So please, if this is really your passion in industrial psychology and you have a dream to do this, it may seem that a year or two is still a long road, but if you think like what Dr. Marissa said, you're going to work still a long time for 90,000 hours, you can be 5 years from now, you can still have nothing, or you can start in pursuing a career in industrial psychology. Okay, so the next question then, what I also get is, what the best industry to gain valuable work experience as an industrial psychologist? So before I'm getting to the specific industries, I want to encourage you to have a look at graduate programs. I know that there's quite a couple of them in the mining industry as well as in the banking industry. What I like about the graduate programs is that they do give you exposure to different types and different fields of industrial psychology. Also, what I've said here is research those companies, see if they have development opportunities. Do they provide you with internships? See, when you research those companies, if you can get, like Sarika said, what is the culture of that company? So where the people development function is a strategic business partner, that is where you want to end up. I've spoken this morning also to an industrial psychology that does a lot of consultation work, even in this lockdown period in North Africa. So be an entrepreneur and do your own thing. Sometimes we think that we do not have that knowledge, but if you, like, for instance, think that engineering students, they build cars, they do what they are told to do. So you are equipped. Please have that believe in yourself that you are definitely able to do this. So normally the mining sectors, but given the current economy, I don't think, or I don't know if you should go that route, but consultation companies, definitely good exposure, petrochemical, banking sector, just shut your eyes and just do it. If the opportunity presents itself, you can stress afterwards and get anxious, but you do not say no to a good opportunity. Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you, Professor Juncker. Yes, I definitely agree with you. If you get opportunities, even if you feel you're not equipped, you are equipped, and you can definitely do this. And I always say you learn as you go. So definitely take that opportunity. Thank you very much, Prof. Cora. There was a few questions, and I can see that some of those questions you definitely addressed within this session. So thank you very much. And I think if we want to talk a little bit further about the field of industrial psychology, what you can specialize in, we will definitely be able to hear about that more from Fiona Martin, which will be next up and talking specifically about that. Thank you very much, Prof. Cora. Fiona, thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you so much. I'm just trying to show my video here. Okay, there we go. So the questions that I'm going to address are really around, sorry, is everyone able to see my presentation?
Yes, we are. Thank you very much, Fiona.
So I'm going to talk about what is the role of an industrial psychologist, within career guidance, particularly from an organizational context. So as Marissa mentioned earlier, my experience has predominantly been within the consulting field in an industrial psychology space. I'm currently working in corporates, and I've also worked in the education sector, not on the academic side. I was more working on programs that used to help university graduates across Africa transition to the world of work. So it was more on that programmatic perspective. But ultimately, the feedback I'm going to give you in this session, I think, is going to be very experience-based, and you might find that might slightly differ depending on how the structure of the organization is or how the culture is. But ultimately, when you're working as an industrial psychologist within a company, right, whether that's a big company or a small company, so I work for an organization that's got about 10,000 or so employees across Africa. So there is absolutely no way I can sit with each individual and give them, individualized career counseling. So the career guidance that you would get if you were to go to Prof. Cara's office or you were to go to Gillian's consulting firm is very different from, I guess, the high-touch nature that you would get within a company, more so because of the volume. So even if you consider maybe working for a company with about, let's say, 30 people, right? Unless your only job is to do career guidance, there is still no way that you're able to do sort of that individualized career guidance, although in some instances it might be. So in as much as I work for a company with thousands of people, there are still many incidences where I do actually sit with someone and we kind of go into a very, I guess, personalized element. So the way that career guidance is often executed within organizations is often done through developing career development processes in a nutshell. So my role as an industrial psychologist, and there's many peers of mine who are working, is really how do you design processes that are scalable? Because remember, as I said, you can't sit with 50 employees, you can't sit with 1,000 or 10,000 employees. So you need to, so your role is often to design processes that people are able to use in your absence. So they must be scalable. And you'll also find many times you're not the one that's on the front line of execution. So if you've got a model, which many large companies use, where they call it a center of excellence. So a center of excellence is a place where processes are designed by deep specialists. So you'll find an organizational psychologist. Also, for example, in my case, I sit at a center of excellence where we design and we develop processes based on expertise. But often the execution will have to happen at the business level, and who is those people that normally have to execute. So your role often would be to execute your work or to execute this career guidance through the line manager, right? So I'm going to go into the elements of, what are some of those processes of career guidance within a company. So in many cases, in fact, the development of an employee, I know many people think it belongs to HR. So it belongs to HR in the sense that we're the experts, right? And we design them. But the responsibility of having a career conversation, the responsibility of developing an employee sits with the line manager, because they are the person that owns the individual. So we come support in terms of giving them the tools and building the capability that they require. So, that's often, I guess, a very gray area, because you might find a manager who says, I'm having issues with these people, they're not engaged, they're not performing, there's team things, and please take them, and do something, find a solution for them. So because you can't be everywhere at the same time, and because it's not sustainable for you to come and intervene, you need to empower the managers. And as Sarika said, many times you'll find those of us who sit at a center of excellence also work through our HR generalists. So HR generalists typically do end-to-end, so they do everything from payroll issues to performance management, so everything that you'd see in an HR value chain. So they often rely on the deep experts to sort of give them a toolkit to say, look, if you've got career guidance issues or you want to develop people, here's a toolkit that you can use. So we often have to equip them. But also remember, the expertise that you bring in, in that ability to design the process, you always have to be aware that the people who have to execute are not going to have the deep expertise that you have. So a challenge that I find within corporate is, how do you actually make this, relatable to a line manager, right? They need to understand, why do I need to do this? What is the reason I need to, do, for example, personal development plan, and what is of value to me? So you really, I guess, have to remove all the theory. So if you've done, something like narrative career counseling, you're not going to teach a manager to do narrative career counseling. I promise you, they're not going to do it. Neither can you teach or expect an HR person. But you obviously will take, so all those modules that you learn during your career psychology, right? You take those, and I guess you have to find a way to filter it in a manner that, if I'm a line manager who's got 10 minutes to go through this and have the conversation, how do I guess, still take something that has scientific rigor, but of course deliver it in a manner, I think, which I guess is less in-depth, as as a psychologist trying to deliver it. And also, so I'm just going to go now into what are those things. So you'll find career guidance tools that you typically find in an organization is your personal development plans. I know anyone can go and download a personal development plan from Google, from the internet, from anywhere. But the value that you bring, and the value, I guess, that I found myself bringing, is you really need to create that discipline. Many people think personal development planning is a tick box exercise. I'm just going to fill this form for HR and I'm going to park it somewhere. But when you actually bring the elements in terms of, why do I actually need a personal development plan? How is it of use to me? And remember, I said, you can't have that individual touch with each person. So I find the PDP is where that individualization comes. So whenever I am confronted, when a manager says, I'm having this issue, my people are not doing this, this is the first question I say is, do they have a personal development plan? Because if I don't know what your plans are, where's your growth, where's your development, it's then very hard to come and sort of do all these interventions when I don't know what the ultimate outcome is in terms of your personal development for that particular year. So that's often a very important one, enabling the manager to know that this is something, that my people should have. And you'll be very surprised how many managers, if you ask them, what are Fiona's aspirations? What does she want to do? Does she want to be a generalist? Do you think she wants to be promoted? Many of them actually do not have an idea, because a lot of the conversations that they have with their people are very transactional, right? So we talk, this is the project, this is the task, but when it comes to that deeper level conversation, many of them don't have it. And therefore they get surprised that a person is disengaged, or, maybe someone leaves, I wasn't really aware that they were not happy, I'm having performance issues. So really, I think having a personal development plan helps them, or in fact, it forces them to actually think, this is where the person wants to be, and therefore that informs how I engage with them, through the year. So even things like task allocation, how do you determine who to give what task? And many times it's actually informed by, what does this person want to do? You might even have a team of 10 people doing the exact same things, but I assure you their development is going to differ. And that is the challenge that managers and even HR people have to do, that individualization, but of course without, the efforts or the time of sitting with each person. The career development conversations for me are key. And that's where you find we often get called in, right? Where a manager hasn't really had any sort of, meaningful career conversation with their people. So Managers speak to their people every day, but you'll find many times it's very transactional, right? We're talking about the work, but there isn't really, you know, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve during this year? What are some of the projects that you think will stretch you? What are your aspirations? You know, me trying to evaluate, okay, out of my team members, who has the capability for me to promote? Who's got, you know, high learning aptitude? You know, so those type of questions. So career conversations, for me, are very key, and many managers do not know how to do it at all levels, right? It's not only new managers, even people who are very experienced, when you ask them very basic questions about that understanding, they don't know how to do it because I guess, you know, in a way that's not their area of expertise. So you as the career guidance, or you as the expert who's got knowledge or deep knowledge in career psychology, should really come and give them the toolkits. You know, so I'm going to use the word toolkits a lot because that's what people. So if I need to have a conversation, a crucial conversation about someone's performance, what is the toolkit? What questions do I ask? Where should I focus on, right? Because it's not, you know, you can't have the same conversation with someone. There's contextual things that you need to take into effect. And I found myself, you know, and I found that is where a lot of psychologists come into place to say, what is the actual issue? Let us look at the context. Let us look at the psychological aspects. Let us look at the workplace aspects, you know, some of the operational aspects, and how can we come to a solution? But sometimes, as I said, you can't be there to consult with a manager at any given time. So having those toolkits where a manager says, okay, at any given time, it's the beginning of the year, I've got a new employee. What are the conversations I should be having? It's mid-year. What are the conversations I should be having? This person is not performing. I feel like I'm at risk of losing this person. What are the conversations? So there's almost a conversation for many, I guess there's many situations as they are people, but I guess where you've got a guideline, where they feel at least, you know, as I said, for me, I think the power of career counseling, you know, and my colleagues might testify, is knowing how to ask the right questions. You know, what are the questions I should be asking, and what are the contextual factors? I think one thing that we're well trained on in psychology is to look at the contextual factors, right? I can't just take a person in a vacuum and they say, here's a call center agent, here's a junior manager, please do something with them, you know, have a conversation with them. You really have to look at the context. Where are they in their career? Where are they in their life? What is important for them right now? What is a priority? What are the skills they have? What are the gaps? What are the motivational issues, the personality issues? There are all those dynamics, which I think bring richness into career conversations, because I guess anyone can have a chat about a career, right, with someone, but you bringing those additional enhancements really, I think, brings rigor, you know, that is able, of course, to do more from a career conversation than you can just by having a chat. Another way or another process that you might be expected to design, or in fact that sits in many companies, is mentoring and coaching. So you are not likely going to be the person that is coaching every individual, but I'll give you an example. Many senior people get access to coaches, right? And a lot of times the coaches are not necessarily industrial psychologists. Sometimes they are ICF. So ICF is International Coaching Federation, and they might actually be just people who are trained in coaching from other means which are not psychology. So you, as the gatekeeper or as the governance person of the mentoring and coaching process, you need to design to say, what are the mentoring requirements for the business? What is it that people need at the various stages that they might be in their career? How do we design and create a process where it is meaningful, you know, that the mentors are equipped and the mentees are equipped? Similar to coaching, right? If you're the gatekeeper or if you're running a coaching process, you can't just say any, you know, Tom, Dick, and Harry coach can just come, you know, see my managers. You almost have to, you know, be almost like the frontline qualitative person. So what I find, right, is when a manager or someone says, oh, I want coaching, I want this person to get coaching, you then have to go deep and say, what exactly is the problem? What exactly is the issue? And, you know, more importantly, is coaching actually the best solution for this particular situation? So you really have to bring that deeper understanding, because as I said, many people say, I want a mentor, I want this, I want that, right? But when you actually then bring the conversation to say, but what is it for and what are you trying to achieve? You actually find maybe even a coach is not what they need. Maybe they actually just need to go for a short course, for example. So for me, I think, you know, that's where we kind of have to equip line managers and HR people to ask the right questions, which will lead to the right intervention. Because I promise you, you can throw interventions at someone left, right, and center, but it might not be what they need. And in fact, I often say to managers, 2 or maybe maximum 3 interventions in a year, sometimes even 1, right? Sometimes maybe the only thing that I need for this person to go to the next level is coaching, or the only thing that they need is for us to have a really well-curated personal development plan. So what you use at what intersection is also important to inform. Your job shadowing and secondment, That's a very important one. So some companies have very structured ones where you can actually know these positions are up for secondment, where you can ask. Some companies it's not structured, so it's really more on a need-to basis. You kind of have to navigate your way through it. But secondments and shadowing is a very, I think, important aspect of exposing people to other fields or other departments. Many companies still operate in a very, I guess, siloed way. So if I'm in HR, so I'm in HR talent management, I only do talent management. But what if I'm interested in what's happening in HR operations? What if I'm interested in seeing what my colleagues in HR data analytics are doing? Is there a structured process which allows me to spend time in that department, just opening up my mind and seeing, am I actually interested in this? So the designing of that, whether it's on a formal or informal basis. So, I haven't really worked for an organization where there's a structured process, but what I've done is equip people. So a person who wants to do a job shadow or a secondment, it's really, I think, helping them to structure it and also saying, is this really the thing that you need and what value are you expecting? And more importantly, how do you get value of it, right? So people think a job shadow or a secondment or, a rotation, whatever it might look like, it's not a matter of me just going and hanging out with people from that department. No, there are questions you should be asking. There's a kind of a structure that makes you almost get as much as you can during that hour or that 2 or whatever time that you spend within that particular department. And I think very important, particularly for interns, right? So I found this sort of for internships, or even for you who are still exploring, what am I interested in? What does the landscape look like? I'll be honest, when I was studying, I kind of obviously had a vague idea in terms of what HR looks like, but it is only when I really got into a company and got exposed, I was like, oh my goodness, there are so many streams of HR, even within, organizational psychology, there are so many streams. I have many friends in the industry who are doing many different things, and you can even see just by the diversity of this panel, we have kind of like different parts. Career workshops, I think, I guess similar to this one, is also a way to scale. So sometimes it's like, okay, we have a bursary process. And you have people who just go and apply for bursaries, but really that conversation, what is the qualification I should choose? And now that I've got the qualification, what am I going to do with it? How do I transition? So having career workshops covering different things. So it could be EQ, right? Right now, I know, a lot of people have anxiety and uncertainty, particularly, with COVID, etc. So this is where industrial psychologists come and be running workshops around, what do I need to recalibrate? How do I manage, I guess, anxiety? And of course, in a non-clinical way, there are many conversations you can have just to help people cope with uncertainty at this particular time, while obviously observing your scope of practice. So career workshops, I find, a very useful way to take many people through a process, right? And this process is like, how do I decide what to study? I'm feeling stuck in my career. What are the questions I should be asking myself? And then, of course, in the absence of you having to sit with each of these people, you give them tools to equip themselves. So, for example, I ran a career workshop the other time around how people could get their own mentors, because we didn't have a formal mentoring program, but we had a lot of people who used to come and say, I want to get a mentor, I want to get a mentor. So the quickest way to address that problem was to say, let us actually walk you through step by step how you can empower yourself to get your own mentor, how you can manage the relationship and get what you need from it, right? So there's a lot of ways, I guess, that you can do, particularly if you have got a lot of volumes in terms of equipping people. And remember, we have the science. So all the scientific talk is when we talk among peers. But when you have an individual that just needs to know, if I'm feeling stuck, what do I do? If I feel like I'm not progressing in my career, what do I do? And almost just empowering them, to be able to walk themselves through that conversation and answer the questions. But of course, the scientific rigor is behind that. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. And it's really, and I think this is in many industries, it's not only within psychology. So I consider myself a specialist. I've always been, and I probably will always be, because that is my orientation, that is my preference. And I never really, I guess, had any, I'm one of those people, even from the time that I enrolled in university, I never really had any second thoughts about, am I studying the right thing, etc. I always felt like I was at home, with what I was studying. But ultimately, should you then specialize early in your career, or should you become a generalist? And that's a really great question. So if you're expecting a yes or no answer, sorry to disappoint you, but it is not that simple in any field. Now, the first question I will say is, self-awareness is your guiding compass. The more self-awareness you have, this question you can literally answer almost in your sleep. And I'll give you an example with myself. Within the first 5 years of my career, I wasn't really working in what I considered like my dream role. So right now, I'd say I'm in my dream profession, I'm in my dream role, I'm doing exactly what I want to do. But for the first 5 years, that was not the case, right? And I remember having certain jobs which I hated, which I didn't enjoy, which I really, really struggled with, right? And for me, it was very, at some point I even thought, am I incapable? What is wrong with me? How is it that I'm struggling to do this thing, which is a very basic, simple thing? How am I not enjoying this? And when I enrolled for my master's, right, I think that was in 2010, we went through this rigorous assessment process. And part of it was we did the MBTI, and I think there were other assessments that we did. And when I sat and the professor who then did the feedback, it felt like someone had opened my diary and was like reading it back to me. And I was like, oh my goodness, it was almost like a very overwhelming sense of release, because, for the very first time, that self-awareness was almost played back to me. So I went back, I literally like had a flashback of all the career experiences that I hated. And I was like, oh my goodness, this makes perfect sense. This is my personality. This is my orientation. This is my preferences. These are my strengths. So therefore, those environments that I absolutely hated, were things that I'm never going to enjoy. So there was actually nothing wrong with me, but I think there was a complete mismatch between the person that I am. And unfortunately, when you don't have that awareness, right, it's difficult, because you kind of think, is there something wrong with me? What is the matter? Why am I struggling? But when you actually, that person environment fit, it almost like becomes like, wow, right? And let me also say this, you will not always be in an environment which is 100% perfect for you, that you enjoy. You don't always have a choice for that. That's how life works. But I think that self-awareness, what it helped me was that every time I looked for a job, right? And even now, if I go and I see a job description and I see what the job entails, I can automatically see the things that I'll hate. So if they say to me, look, 50% of this job requires doing ABC, and I know that, oh, I don't really like ABC, automatically I steer away from that job. So, as I said, you're not always in a position where, you don't always have the luxury of turning down jobs. But where I have the opportunity to be picky about jobs, I literally know which jobs to run away a mile from, because I know that the things that they involved are not to my strength, and therefore I'm actually going to get frustrated. I'm not going to enjoy it. So, for example, I love I love conceptual work. I love building processes. I like starting things from scratch. So if I have a job which is very operational, run-of-the-mill, where I don't have a lot of opportunity to be innovative, I know I'm going to get frustrated. I know I'm going to get annoyed, and I'm probably going to hate it. So that self-awareness is very important, and it will almost be your guide in terms of, do I actually enjoy generalist work? And there isn't a right or wrong one. It's really about what is right for you. And also, just another, I guess, bombshell that I want to drop is that early in your career, it may not be your choice. I work with graduates, as I mentioned, and I always say to them, the first 5 years, I was not in my dream job. I was not doing what I wanted to do. Many of us, and I'm pretty sure even my panelists, if they were to share, many of us probably at some point or the other had jobs that we didn't enjoy, jobs that we didn't like, jobs, but at that time, my first job, I think I was doing business development for some company that sold things I didn't even have an interest in, but I needed a job, right? I was a graduate. I'd been looking for months, as many of you, can probably testify, and I needed a job. So that was my step in. Then after that, I worked in the recruitment sector. So at agency level, at corporate sector, it was okay. It was fine. Didn't really set my heart on fire, but it was a job that I needed. And so it took me 5 years to get into, my dream role, or so don't put pressure on yourself. Yes, I know that we all kind of want to land into that dream company. So some of you right now are working in HR, you're working in finance, you're working in all sorts of places. I recall there was a lady that I was talking to who was working in another different field, but she had been wanting to sort of transition. And I think, recently she actually got an entry-level job into HR, right? So, the journey is not linear for everyone. And, it might not always work to say you get, and unfortunately, with where we are, with the economy, the declared recession, etc., jobs are going to become very difficult, right? So many of us are going to have to take survival jobs, or jobs in kind of like areas that we don't want to. But one thing that I will say to you is, when you're in that job that you're not enjoying, always think, how is this helpful for where I want to be, right? So don't get stuck in it and say, okay, this is like a temp survival job, and then 10 years later, you're still there and you're not making the efforts. So every time I was in recruitment, in business development, whatever job, I always thought, I want to be an IOP doing ABC in future, right? So this is how I'm going to use this job that I feel very lukewarm about, to make sure that at least I am building some or other skill towards that. And if you're in an industry that is completely unrelated, what I would do is I always network with people, right? So if you're working in finance right now and you're doing your degree, always, events like these, find industrial psychologists that you're always networking with, that you're having conversation. That way you always have your ear to the ground in terms of the industry. And that was one of the things that motivated me. I was like, oh my goodness, this is exciting. This is where I want to be. And ultimately, as a result of that, right, it kept me almost like warm, towards what I wanted to do. Informational interviews are key. I think Prof. Cora kind of touched on them as well. So one thing I want to say is you would be very surprised, and these are people at all levels. Someone will say, oh, I really like this professional. I love data science. I like this. And the first thing I'll say is, okay, do you know anyone? Have you spoken to anyone who's working in that industry? Then it's like, no. Okay, so how do you know you enjoy it? Well, I don't know. It sounds interesting. Maybe the label, maybe you've seen something on TV. Informational interviews are probably the most underutilized career tool, right? And an informational interview, if you go on my website, I actually have a list of about 30 informational interviews that you can ask at all levels. It is an interview with someone who is working in the industry, and there are particular questions you have to ask, to determine will I enjoy. So if I say, oh, geez, culture work sounds interesting, or OD or HR generalist sounds interesting, right? I can't decide that from afar. I need to sit with the person who is working in that field and say, what do you spend most of your day doing? What is the best part of the job? What do you hate about your job? What is kind of the typical career path of someone who's in this industry? How do I get in if I wanted to break through? What are the qualities of people that make it there, in this industry? Because I guess not every industry is for everyone, right? Who are the people that make it? What are the qualities that make you a good HR generalist or a good industrial psychologist? You need to find as many people in the industry as you can to speak to, right? So even if you're like in first year, for the next 4 years, whether it's once a month, once every 2 months, keep your eye on the ball, because I find the more you speak to people and get first-hand experience, you might actually say to yourself, oh, actually this, kind of doesn't sound like my cup of tea, right? And you will never know that through, yes, you can research, and I guess Google can tell you some really great information, but when you sit with someone who is there right in the trenches, they will give you that first-hand account, around what it entails. So please do not say you're interested in something if you have not done an informational interview, because you're kind of, almost like just fantasizing, as it is, and those are very important. And also just around, the specialization versus generalization. If you want to specialize, larger companies are more conducive for that. So you find, I work in talent management. Many small to medium companies will not have a talent management person. So you'll find an HR generalist or some role or the other is doing everything, right? So the bigger the company, the more capability to specialize, but you'll find in the small companies, unless it's a consulting company specializing in that area, you're most likely having to work for the larger companies. And then, I think lastly on this point is to say, you know what, sorry about that. And I think, sorry about that. The last point on this is, it is not mutually exclusive. I'm a specialist, and as I've said, it's something that I've always enjoyed. I probably will do it, but there is nothing that stops me from veering off and being a generalist. Sarika, who spoke earlier, when we did our internship at the same company many moons ago, right? And we're both, I guess, in a specialist environment. Then she went generalist, right? And there's nothing that absolutely stops her in future, in 5, in 10 years, next year, from coming back in a specialist path. So don't always think of it as it's mutually specialist. Sorry, that it's mutually exclusive, because there is possibility to sort of like go between the two. Try one, you don't like it, you go to another, you come back. So careers are not linear anymore, and it's not always a binary process. And I think, just, I don't know how much time I have. I can't see my fellow colleagues. I just sort of like get a hint of the time.
Yeah, Fiona, yes, your time is up. But maybe
okay, cool. So,
last words.
Okay, great. Last words. I'm not going to go into this question, but I think for me, last words, a really great question that was asked is around, how do we make sure IOPs do not become redundant or get taken over? For me, whether I've been working in an environment where I identify as an IOP or not, you need to show your value over and above other professionals who are doing similar work to you, right? So if an HR professional, can do career guidance, can do whatever the case, you need to show that your depth of expertise is such that you do it better than a person who has not been through that training. And for me, that's how we really keep ourselves relevant in any profession. And as Sarika also mentioned, with 4IR and the way the world of work is going, human skills are going to become more important, right? Being human is going to be the competitive advantage, because technical skills can be automated. So those things like EQ, leadership, empathy, they're going to come to the fore. And of course, those are constructs that are within our area of expertise. So we are well positioned, to be able to craft and make ourselves relevant even as we go into 4IR, because as long as human beings are in the work, and as long as we've got a superior understanding of human beings than other professionals out there, that is how we make ourselves relevant. And thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Fiona, and thank you for sharing your expertise. And I think it's a very valuable information that you gave to the students today and our future industrial psychologists. And there was a few questions regarding that. where can we specialize in? And we've got various different fields in which we can specialize. It's very diverse. And of course, it's very important to know that, like you said, as long as there's humans, we need to look at the human factor within companies. And of course, it's very important to know with those fields, we can also open up our own practice as well. But how do we do something like that? And that is something that Gillian will be able to share with us today. Thank you very much, Gillian.
Okay, sorry, so I'm just getting my voice back before I can. Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you so much for the questions you posed. So I'm going to cover a little bit more about going into your own practice, so being self-employed as an IOP. And so the first question is that there is no perfect time. Every consultant you speak to who has gone into their own practice has a different and unique story. So there isn't a rule book as to when you must go, how much experience you need, what you need to have in place before you start. Often we hold ourselves back and we keep saying, well, once I have this much experience, then I'll start. Or once I have this, then I'll start. So often we could probably start sooner in our own practice than what we actually do. But definitely experience is something to consider when you're looking at being a self-employed industrial psychologist. And so experience is going to give you the knowledge, of course. But for me, the most important thing that experience is going to give you is your confidence. When you are a consultant, you have to have a lot of confidence. You've got to go into the place of work and you've got to convince people that you're going to be able to deliver. So for me, my work experience gave me confidence and gave me a comfort in having my own voice. And then the next is your experience also gives you a network. So a lot of the work that I get as an industrial psychologist comes from the people I know, my colleagues, people I've worked with, people who've enjoyed my service. So the more you can get experience and build your network, you can draw on that network when you have to start your own practice. And then the last thing that comes from experience is defining what you want from your own practice. Because that's a very key factor, and it's a huge factor in terms of the success of my practice. Because initially when I started, I was like, okay, I'm just jumping in the deep end and I'm hoping for the best. So I would offer every service under the sun. And what I came to discover is the more I was able to hone my niche and actually pick a niche that I wanted to focus on, the better it was for my business. So having time working and deciding what you like and what you don't like is very important in terms of creating the base for yourself to start your practice. So you get to decide when you're ready and when you feel comfortable to start. For me, the signs is when you feel excited about it, you feel like it's juicy and you're curious and you keep daydreaming about it. That's an important factor. When you're sure of your value, so the more you're sure on what you have to offer, and you're clear on how you're going to offer that. So what I've described in the next slide, I just want to go down, is that how do you get clear on what you want to do? So first is to know who you are, know what strengths you offer, what gifts do you want to share with the world? Really understand what it is that you do differently and what it is that makes you authentic and unique. And then to decide who your ideal client is. So what type of people do you love to work with? For me, I love one-on-one engagements, but I also have a real big passion and a lot of excitement and joy when I facilitate, so larger groups. And I get a lot of joy designing on my own. So who is your ideal client? Who are the people you really love to work with? What problems does your ideal client have that you would really be excited to solve? So that's an important question to start to unpack so that you can decide how you can solve that problem of theirs. And then how do you make your unique offering different from other people? And that's the big factor in terms of success in your own practice for me, is that yes, we can all go out and do the same as everybody else, and it's possible, and you can be successful that way. But the key, and I think the one thing that I think has made a difference in my own practice, is getting clear on what makes you different, staying true to who you are and what you love and what makes you excited, and then matching that excitement up with a need that's in the world that you can solve. So also being very flexible and able to adapt and adjust as things move on. Once you decide what you want to do, it's not set in stone. You can change over time, and you can decide to do different things as time progresses. I also am covering a little bit around the advantages and disadvantages of working for yourself and being in your own practice. Now, this is unique to me. I'm sure other consultants will give you different advantages and disadvantages. It depends on the person. But the first is that working for myself gives me a lot of flexibility. I've been able to design how I work, when I work, who I work for, and really have a choice around picking work that gels with me, and deciding who I like to work with and who I don't, and having the freedom to put my own flavor into the work that I do. So I'm not very good at being told what to do, so I wasn't a very good employee. I like to have independence. I like to have my own voice, and working for myself offers me that. There is the potential for higher earning. I know in my own practice, I've always earned more money working for myself than what I ever did working for somebody else, but it depends on the type of work that you do. Some of the challenges that I have experienced working for myself is definitely fluctuating income. There's not a guarantee. So unless you have certain retainers and things with clients, sometimes working as a consultant, there is a fluctuation in terms of your income. Work-life balance. So as a consultant, sometimes you are always on. So even if it's 8 o'clock at night or if it's the weekend, you tend to work a lot more because it's your own baby that you are growing and that you're putting effort and energy into. So sometimes it's a learning lesson in the beginning to try and establish a work-life balance. It's hard work. It's not easier than working for a corporate, but it's your own. So the hard work is rewarded because you're building something that reflects you and you're building something that's yours. So almost I enjoy the hard work that comes with it. And sometimes there's a lack of support. So when you go out on your own, sometimes you don't have people you can lean on to help you in the beginning. And that's one of the things you also learn in your own practice is to start to reach out, have colleagues that you can have chats with and share ideas, and also have support in terms of other skills. You don't have to be the marketer and the accountant and the industrial psychologist. You don't have to be every aspect of a company in order for it to run. You can actually draw on support. And then the one thing that the disadvantage is it's scary. I think it can be daunting to go into your own practice and to start something new and to have it reflect you and to have that responsibility for making it work. But I would never change my choice. I've been in my own practice since 2012, and I'm very happy. It gives me everything that I want, and I keep being able to reinvent myself and push myself and experience new things and make it my own. So there's a lot of joy in that. Then the second question that I had is around career guidance. And I have a big passion around career guidance. And the question is that is psychological assessment a core component of career guidance? And then the second question is, how do you approach career guidance with people who don't believe in assessments? So yes, when we are trained as industrial psychologists and as psychometrists, we are behavioral scientists. So we are told from the very beginning, we need to rely on valid and reliable evidence. We have to have vigor, scientific vigor. We have to prove where our choices and our decisions come from. It has to be grounded in research, which is wonderful. There's a huge advantage to that. So when you use psychometric assessments, they can be hugely helpful. They can encourage somebody to tap into their own self-insight and self-awareness. And it can be a shortcut to that. Okay, so yes, there's a huge place for psychometric assessments, and I can see the value in using them. But there is a downside for relying and holding on too tightly to psychometric assessments, because it tends to create the impression that the assessment is going to give us the answer. So a lot of people tend to come to an industrial psychologist and say, do those tests on me so that I can know what to do in my life. And that is for me placing the responsibility in the wrong place. So the downside of psychometric assessments is that people think that it's going to give them their answer. They're going to trust in that result over trusting in what feels right for them. So for me, the role of the industrial psychologist is to create the safe space where people can start to ask themselves questions, dig deeper internally, understand themselves in a clear way, so that they can answer their own questions. So yes, our qualification allows us access to psychometric assessments, but in no ways are they the only method. And what makes us special as industrial psychologists is that we are trained in multiple methods and that we are encouraged to be broad, is not to stick to one methodology, only psychometric assessments, but actually to use multiple methods and to adjust and adapt and remain in perpetual creative response. And when a client needs something, you can draw on a particular method to help them. And when they need something else, you can use something else. So even if people don't like assessments, in no way do you have to use them. There are many different techniques and methodologies. So I would encourage industrial psychologists just to broaden out a little bit, because there's loads of different options and different avenues. And definitely, while there's value in assessments, our role as the industrial psychologist is really to create the safe space where people can play and question and have support as they start to decide for themselves what they want to do. So I'm going to end off at that so that we can have time for questions.
Thank you very much, Gillian. I think that is very inspirational. And one of the questions that came out, and maybe that's something you can answer with all the practical examples that you gave, is that some of the guys finished off with their studies and then they want to start working. But some of the requirements says that you need to at least have 5 to 7 years experience. And how can you build your profile during that time, or at least build a kind of experience or profile whilst you maybe are still studying or just after studying? What would you recommend?
So I always say to people is that you've got to build a little bit of exposure and experience. So when you've just finished studying, when I finished my honors degree, I thought that I would immediately have access to the type of roles that I wanted. And I had to lower my expectation a little bit and just think a bit more broadly. Be willing and open to trying different types of jobs and understanding that work exposure was going to give me a stepping stone to move closer to something that I enjoyed or that I wanted more. And similar to what Fiona said, is that, sometimes you want to be here and you've got to jump around to get there. And just because you take a job that isn't exactly what you envision that you want, doesn't mean that it's not going to add value. And often the way creating that network, building the skill, can often either clarify what you want next or give you access to something closer.
Yes, thank you very much, Gillian. I think I definitely agree with that. Even if you feel this is not where I want to be at this point in time in my life, see what is some of the skills that you can build and what is it that you can in that position use to upskill yourself for another position that you are in terms of that. One of the other questions that I came out of the group, and there's a lot of questions, thank you very much, we see in our Q&A and our chats, is what can we actually use our degree overseas? Or if we study overseas, can we actually use that degree in South Africa? Prof. Cora, would you be able to answer that one for us, please?
Yes, I in preparation for this webinar, I specifically look what or try to see what I can get from what the Health Professions Council say about the international recognition of this degree, because it's always a question that students will definitely ask. They do say that it compares internationally well with what other degrees overseas constitutes of. But again, remember that it's professional. So every country that you want to practice in will have their own board of psychology or regularity bodies. So definitely, if you want to work there as a psychologist, you will have to write their type of board exam or admissions exam, as well as vice versa. If someone from overseas wants to practice here, they will also in depth look what the curriculum constituted of and the experience, and of course they will also have to write the board exam. So it's the same, it's not only for industrial psychology, it's the same for all other health professions, for medical doctors if they want to practice from overseas when they come to South Africa, and vice versa. But definitely, how I also know this is that some of you will know that many of our universities like Northwest University and UJ and Stellenbosch, we all have programs and collaboration with European universities that gives students opportunities to go and work there. And we visit them, we have good collaborations to make sure that we stay with what is happening on national and in international level.
Thank you very much, Prof. Cora. I think one of the things that everybody needs to remember is that if you want to do your master's, make sure that your honors degree adheres to the requirements that is required for that master's program at that specific institution, and that institution's master's program is also accredited with the Health Profession Council in South Africa. You can only become an industrial psychologist once you've completed your master's degree, the internship, and once you've passed the HPCSA board exam. That is when you become an industrial psychologist. So it's quite a lengthy route to take, but that's why I'm saying you are a professional within the field because of all that years study and also being registered as a healthcare practitioner as well. So I'm going to ask Gillian and Fiona to please just come on board with us. I'm going to open up the floor now. If you have any questions, please indicate with the raise your hand function, and then I can allow you just to state your question or make your comment. So you're more than welcome to raise your hand if you have a question for us. You're welcome to use the raise your hand function if you have any questions for us. Great, so I'm just quickly allowing. Rafilwe, you're welcome to just unmute yourself and to state your question.
Hi. I wanted to know, I joined in the seminar very late, like I joined in the middle, so I wanted to ask because I sent through my question and I'm not sure if you already answered it, but I wanted to know what the importance of having a payroll certificate or doing payroll is, because I've just completed my my degree, and now that I realize that so many of the jobs that are available for people who have just done their undergrad, they mostly require experience and most of them require being able to do payroll. So I wanted to know how that works and which direction one would go if they want to work as like in HR, but with payroll.
So your question is more specifically based on payroll. Maybe Sarika or Fiona maybe will be able to answer that. Sarika, as a HR manager, maybe that would be something that you'll be able to answer for us, please.
Sure. So hi, Rafilwe. So I think it really depends on the organization and where the payroll sits, because, for instance, in my previous organization, payroll sat with HR. In my current organization, the payroll sits with our finance team. So I don't think it would be too beneficial to get a specific certificate in payroll necessarily, because companies also use different software. So I think it's more important to hone in on your specific skills related to your undergrad, pursue going further if you want to into the industrial psychology and completing to board exam. And wherever you get a role in a certain company, if payroll is part of the functions, that's normally trained, there's training offered for that. So I wouldn't necessarily go into any specific qualification payroll because it can differ across organizations.
Great, thank you very much, Sharika. I hope that helped, Refilwe. We've got another question from Leratu. Leratu, you're welcome to state your comment or question.
Hi, Dr. Marissa and the panel. Thank you so much. It's been a really insightful program that you guys have set, even for me, because I mean, I work full time and I followed a part-time journey in terms of, you know, obtaining my qualification. I recently got my results to say I got my master's degree, and which is really awesome. And I'm about to embark on the journey of going through my internship. And I asked a question earlier around, you know, whether I can do it part-time because I can't afford to to be on an internship, basically. So what I wanted to find out, I mean, with lockdown and all the restrictions, I mean, is the HPCSA accepting new registrations at this point in time? Because I do have a program that I've taken through the university and I have somebody who's going to supervise me. However, you know, there really isn't clear correspondence around whether they'll accept new applications or not at this point in time.
Thank you very much for your question, Lerato. I'm going to just ask Louise to assist with answering that question. Louise? Just making sure that she is still on here. Yes, thank you very much, Louise. Maybe you'll be able to assist.
Hi, everyone. I've kind of been the silent writer in the group today. Hello. Lerato, I'm going to be honest with you. At this point in time, we don't have any formal communication around when they're going to sit to actually look at the internships. The offices in terms of level 4 are in a kind of a lockdown phase, so there's not necessarily anyone there. I would strongly advise that you consult with your university. There's usually a dedicated supervisor in the university. So some universities have multiple supervisors and then one sort of primary supervisor. Other universities have just one industrial psychologist in the department looking after the interns. I think it would be a good idea to just liaise with them, because there are some complexities attached to doing an internship on a part-time basis in terms of timeline management as well. So you are most welcome to email Sciopsa directly as well. If you want any further guidance around that, or if you want us to liaise alongside with the university on your behalf, we'd be happy to assist from professional practices side. Okay. I hope that answered your question. Unfortunately, I don't want to give any concrete answers if we're not sure. All right.
Thank you very much, Louise. Louise is our executive member specifically for professional practice and also working in that sector. Ashley, you also raised your hand. You're welcome to state your question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marissa. Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley, and I've completed my honors degree with UJ in 2016 already. I decided to go and work because I couldn't do my master's due to financial constraints. I wanted to know, does Sciopsa offer bursaries for master's students, like being the board of our industrial psychologists?
Thank you very much for that question, Ashley. At this current state, we do not have any bursaries that we offer from Sciopsa. But as soon as we have something available, we will most certainly be able to promote that on our social media as well as send out a mailer. But yes, like I said, unfortunately, we don't have that bursary option at Sciopsa, but we are definitely looking into that. And thank you very much for asking for that as well. Thank you, Ashley. I'm going to allow Tatu to quickly state the question. Tatu, yes, you're welcome to unmute yourself. Let me help you there. Okay, welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Afternoon, everybody.
Hello.
My question, hello. My question is, I did my honors in human resource management. It's a BCom honors, and then I got the opportunity this year to actually do an internship. And what happens is that at the organization that I'm doing my internship at, I'm actually getting rotational experience pertaining to what we're doing in industrial organizational psychology. And my passion has always been to go into IOP because I did my undergrad in industrial psych, but I couldn't get in for my honors, so I took the HR route. So I just wanted to find out what's the possibility of actually being taken to do my master's with my human resource honors. So that's the question. How do I transition from here to that? Because I did hear the question that they actually look at the modules that I did, but I just want to find out from the development aspect that I'm getting, what possibility can I be taken to do my master's and be registered as industrial psychologist? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tatu. Panelists, who would be able to answer that one for Tatu? Cora, thank you.
Tatu, well, first of all, I'm so glad that I can hear that you are considering to follow your passion. So that's a very good first step, of course. So I cannot speak for all universities because, as I've said, we've got our own, each higher education institution has their own set of guidelines. But what I can foresee that will happen is if you have an honors degree in human resource management, that you will have to do an honors in industrial psychology as well. But I foresee that you will get some credits definitely for some of those courses that you did. So instead of, say, for instance, it will, of the 16 modules, maybe you will need to do 8 more, specifically those that speaks with the IO psychology field. So definitely then start with an honors degree in industrial psych, and then go for the selection and onto your masters.
Great, thank you very much, Prof. Cora, for that. Let me just see Johannes, welcome. Let me quickly unmute you. You are welcome to state your question. There you go. Yes, welcome, Johannes.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Marissa. I'm calling from Namibia. And
wonderful.
Yeah, so I had spoken to Dr. Cora in the questions chat a while back, but my question specifically is when it comes to I'm currently a holder of a degree in computer science, where I'm trying to switch over into industrial and organizational psychology. However, the challenge I'm facing right now is that the universities here in Namibia only offer the degree on a full-time basis. And so I wanted to know if there are any universities in South Africa that any one of you guys could recommend that I would be able to do a degree while living here. Maybe only go for, I don't know, workshops or something, but something that would allow me to still work and live in Namibia, but study in South Africa. Another question I have is my interests are really in business and leadership coaching, and also organizational culture, how to form healthy organizational cultures in businesses. And so I'm 26, I'm married, and so I do not want to make the mistake of pursuing another degree and then not being happy with it. I do believe I'm on the right track. However, I wanted to know, is a degree in organizational psychology more appropriate for what I want, or would a degree in business management be more appropriate for that? So that's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Johannes. So basically your questions is twofold. I think the first one, I'm going to ask Prof. Cora maybe to address that one. And then the second one, Gillian, if that would be able for you, be able to address that one. Thank you very much. Yes, Prof. Cora, thank you.
Yes, I think this is a bit of a tough situation. It is, to begin with, not very easy to work and study. So you must definitely make sure that, as you said, you follow your passion there. Okay, so the only university that I currently know of that will maybe suit your needs if you are staying still in Namibia is to try to do like the pre-graduate then through UNISA. From then onwards, I know that the Health Professions Council, they update their list, and you will have to inquire of some universities that will offer like a part-time, maybe a part-time honors degree. I think I said in the chat, well, I only know, my knowledge is basically of Northwest University, and I know that our Vaal delivery side do offer a part-time honors degree. So you will definitely have to see that you do that and maybe negotiate with your employer that you can take time off. I know even we're not the only university that even in masters we often like blocked classes. So for instance, you will have all of your modules in 1 week, so that when you need to take off from work, it will definitely be then quality time spent, and not, only take off from work a day here or a day there. So if your pre-graduate was in computer science without any reference with industrial psychology, and you want to do that, that will be the route. However, you said, I remember the question of business management, leadership. The thing about coaching and mentoring, of course, in industrial psychology, with my whole heart, I believe that mentoring and coaching falls within industrial psychology. But I do know of people that is not in industrial psychology that still does business coaching and leadership. I know, for instance, that UJ offers a master's degree, I think, in leadership. Marissa, I think it's leadership development. So maybe you can do something like that as well without becoming an industrial psychologist, and then do a really good maybe a course or something in coaching that you can register. I don't know anything about Namibia's regulatory bodies, but within South Africa, Comensa, you can ask them how you can get registered then as a coach. So that can also be a possible path if you want to do coaching specifically within business and leadership development. I hope that helped.
Thank you, Cora.
Yeah, I was only Cora answered the question so wonderfully, but I was only going to add two things. Is that when you are stuck, firstly, when you're an adult and you've made a choice and you've studied a degree and you feel like it was your wrong choice, it does feel daunting to kind of study again and hope that you're not going to fall into the same trap. But you're completely the different person now. So you're so much wiser now that you've already had the experience of a degree. So what I would suggest is, and it's a lot of the exercises I use with clients, is print some information from, take one university, so don't overwhelm yourself with too many universities, and print the course curriculum for business management, and then print a course curriculum for industrial psychology, and take a green highlighter for no and a pink highlighter for yes, and just highlight everything that makes you excited. So, and then just compare. You'll find after an exercise like that, one of the options will stand out. They will have all pink and less green or whatever. Is that sometimes it's as simple as evaluating which one makes you more excited, and to progress on that step and let it unfold from there. But definitely, if you're leaning towards the understanding the people side, industrial psychology is the way to go, even if it might be the longer option. But the business management is less people-y.
Thank you very much, Gillian. We are running a little bit out of time. I'm going to take only 2 more questions. Ivan, you are welcome to state your comment or ask your question.
Perfect, thank you. Good afternoon. I'd just like to find out from you guys if you do perhaps know, I am planning on starting with my internship next year. But with the current lockdown, do you guys have any idea if 2020's interns would be able to complete their internship? Because I've got a registered internship lined up with the HPCSA, and I'm just wondering if they will be able to complete theirs. Is there like a virtual aspect to the internship? Would they be able to still complete theirs within the 12-month process for me to start off in January or not?
Thank you very much, Ivan. I'm going to ask Louisa, our professional practice person, if she might be able to assist with that question for us. Louise? Not sure if she's there on that side. Okay. Otherwise, anybody else on the panel that would be able to answer that question?
Well, maybe I can just repeat, I think what Louise said in a previous question is that nobody knows, but it's advisable to contact the supervisor where you are registered within that higher education institution, because every university has a designated person working with internships, and maybe work via them to make contact with the Health Professions Council, because yes, I think that's a very valid question. We are also asking that question with our own honours students that need to still do the 720 or 6 months practicums of what the decision will be. So yes, definitely I hope that we will be able to commence and that they will be able to make some, don't know, decisions or opportunities or give guidelines that we will be able to follow.
Yes, yeah, I agree, Prof. Cora. There is a few guidelines that the Health Profession Council, I think, is working on at this stage. I know that I have a meeting in May month as well. Yes. And I think it might be best to also just come in contact with the HPCSA, specifically Mrs. Hilda Beloy, which is working with internships, yes, to clarify that burning question that you have in terms of the internship. Thank you very much, Ivan, for that valid question. I think there's other interns that also has the same worry about that. So I'm going to just take the last question as we are unfortunately running out of time. So yes, let me quickly say, Louisa, yes, Louisa, you're welcome to state your question.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for a very insightful session. My question is okay, so a bit of background. I've always wanted to study overseas and one day work there as well. And lately, as I'm doing my honors now, I've been thinking, wouldn't I be making my path towards working overseas easier and open the door in doing my master's overseas? Now I want to ask, does Sciopsa as a body or you as individuals have any contacts with universities abroad? And how does one go about searching for varsities for doing your master's in industrial psychology abroad somewhere? And is there recommended or suggested institutions for doing it at, that is properly accredited and so forth?
Thank you very much, Louisa. I think that's something that Professor Juncker mentioned a little bit earlier. Some of the universities in South Africa has collaborations with universities overseas as well, and that links up to that universities. So yeah, I don't know if you want to add something about that, Prof. Juncker, or the other panelists for Louisa's question.
Okay, I think, yes, of course, I will advise, of course, to broaden your horizons in doing a master's degree overseas. Just keep in mind of what we said earlier, that if you do a master's degree there and you want to come back to South Africa and practice here, they will have to like see what is within that specific degree. You will have to write a board exam, and they can probably say, listen, you don't have enough depth or experience in a certain field of industrial psychology. So my advice would be to make sure that you can like collaborate rather within your university. We have, for instance, collaborations with Tilburg University, the University of Ghent, Leuven University, especially in Europe, within the Netherlands and within Belgium, so that you can then do part of your degree with your host university in South Africa and part of your degree in the other university. My advice will be, if you really want to do it overseas, follow your passion and do it. Make sure that you are knowledgeable and that you have enough information on the path that you want to take. I don't know, Jill, if you have also very creative suggestions for Louisa.
I was just going to suggest Global Education. So it's a company in South Africa. A lovely lady runs it. And she's very knowledgeable about universities internationally. And what you can do is set up an appointment with her or one of her consultants, and you can explain the area that you're hoping to study in. Maybe some people are more inclined to Australia or Europe. You can say where you want to study, and she'll give you the universities that they have relationships with. She'll also help you sign all the forms and also understand the costs involved. So just Google Global Education, and it's a really helpful resource to have, especially, often the consultants in South Africa, we don't have a lot of knowledge about studying overseas, and this place is a nice stop to get lots of realistic and relevant information.
Great, thank you very much, Gillian. Yes, we ran out of time, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm just going to ask the panelists, and thank you again for joining us and sharing your expertise and knowledge. And I'm going to ask you again to share maybe a little bit, a last words of encouragement for our future industrial psychologists. Let's start with Sarika. What is your last words of encouragement?
Thanks. Yeah, guys, I think, from what all of the ladies have shared, and, there's many different ways. So I think my words of encouragement is do your research, find out what you love and enjoy. Like, I really love what Gillian said about that. And there's always different options. And also just play to your strengths as what our studies provide and the knowledge that we have to bring. So play to your strengths.
Thank you very much, Sarika. Play to your strengths. That's really a beautiful encouragement. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your expertise today. Gillian, what is your last words of encouragement?
I think I would just say it's not a race. So don't feel like you have to do all your studies in a certain period of time or before you're a certain age. Just be patient and take it bit by bit. It took me about 11 years to get through the whole cycle because I changed my mind a couple of times, and that's okay too. So just be patient with yourself and just follow what unfolds. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to have everything perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Gillian. I think most students put a lot of pressure on themselves to make a decision early on in their career because it needs to be right. But we learn as we go, and I think it's great that that those words is very encouraging as well. And thank you very much for sharing your expertise here with us as well today. Fiona, what would be your last words of encouragement for us today?
Yeah, I think also building on what Gillian has said, the process sometimes takes as long as it needs to take, So I did my master's only 5 years after being in the world of work, and I always felt like, I was behind, I should have done it earlier. But, before I knew it, I had done my internship, finished my master's, and like that 2.5 or so year process went by so fast. So I think particularly for those of you who are sitting on the fence, or for those of you who've already been working for a couple of years, and when you think about, it's another 2 to 3 years for me to enroll into master's, and that's perfectly fine. The time will pass by very quickly. So I really encourage you, I think, as Jillian says, it's not a race, do it when you need to. If you do it when you're 40, that's fine. If you can do it when you're 23, that's okay too.
Great. Thank you very much, Fiona, for sharing your expertise. And yes, if you want to look a little bit more about Fiona's blogs and podcasts, please have a look at her page as well. Very insightful information in there, and also well to look at in terms of resources. So thank you so much, Fiona, for sharing your expertise, and also for setting up this student webinar and the initiatives that you took to start off with this. Thank you very much from my side. Professor Juncker, what would be your last words of encouragement for our future industrial psychologists today?
I'm excited about industrial psychology. I'm excited about the questions that students asked. I can only echo what my colleague said. Be bold, but be patient with yourself, but don't be afraid to start your own thing, especially if you are working in South Africa. I still believe there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities overseas, but also within Africa itself. Start small, do what you do it well, and listen to your heart, listen to what your strengths will be, what you are passionate about. It mustn't feel forced. Anything that feels forced, I believe, is wrong. So go with what you're good at, find that specialist area, like Julian said, and also Fiona. It mustn't be forced. Maybe it will still be a journey, so be patient with yourself. But you must really think also to be an entrepreneur and start doing it. Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor Cora, and thank you very much for also sharing your expertise as well and answering some of the burning questions on our future industrial psychologists and face what they are faced with, and some of the things that they wonder about. From my side, thank you very much to all our panelists. We really appreciate you being here with us today. If you would like to know a little bit more, if you want to reach out to us, please, there is our email addresses included on here. So you're more than welcome to send us an email or comments or questions. And you also, of course, very much welcome to contact Sciopsa, info@sciopsa.org.za, if you would like to know a little bit more of industrial psychology. We are the industrial psychology society for industrial psychologists within South Africa. And if you would like to become a member and take part and volunteer, please do contact us and become a member as well. So from my side, thank you very much, everyone, and stay inspired, stay encouraged. Don't lose motivation during this time. Do what you can do during your time in lockdown with your studies, doing your masters, and you still need to do that dissertation, which you are avoiding. Please do that. Use your time. It's going to definitely benefit you in the long run as well. So from my side, thank you very much, everyone, and also for your questions, and have a lovely day. And we will definitely have another student webinar session like this in the future. So yes, check out our social media pages on Sciopsa. To the panelists, again, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. I wish we could actually have more time, because there's definitely more things that we will be able to share with our future industrial psychologists. So thank you so much, Sarika, Jill, Cora, and Fiona. And also to Marissa and Louise for helping out at the back end of this webinar. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.